right, Pasadenans and heroes everywhere. It is I, your friendly neighborhood Rabbi John Carrier, coming to you live from the auspices of Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center to answer the burning question, do I still need a synagogue? Does it even make a difference to have a synagogue in my life in these times where I can't leave my house? Can't I just be Jewish at home and that's good enough, or Jew curious at home without belonging to a synagogue? I have an opinion about this, and I'm going to share that with you in just a moment and answer whatever questions you have. But first, let's take a brief musical interlude. Stick around. All right, everybody, back at you. Let's see what my face looks like. Oh, sorry about that. Just my face. Let's fix the camera. This is very professional. So delighted to be with you again. It is I, your friendly neighborhood Rabbi John Carrier, coming to you from Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center. From is a word that I use loosely these days, just like the word at. I think should be replaced by that little at symbol. Where is the meeting at? Is not proper English, but I grew up in Texas, so there you go. Tell you what, everybody, I am delighted to be here with you. I hope you're delighted to be here with me. Going to check out the multi-chat, see who has joined us so far. And I see Carla J is in the house, says, hello, EV. EVI, very nice to see you. Natalie Soretta says, shalom, y'all, speaking my language, and delighted to learn with y'all from the YouTube arena, it looks like. We've got people joining us from YouTube, people joining us from Facebook Live sometimes, even the Twitch, twitch.tv/Pasadena Jewish, if you want to learn a new platform. Originally designed for live streaming video games, but I found when I started making live videos on YouTube Live, YouTube is my home territory, if you will, I just found the live streaming work better on Twitch. I don't know if that's still true today for these kinds of discussions, but I'm willing to try anything as long as if it involves teaching Torah, helping people connect with the Jewish tradition, helping people connect with each other. I will try just about anything that is kosher and non-fatal. So if you've got some ideas out there, please throw them my way. Tammy Lynn Garrison says, howdy from Facebook. Nice to see you here, Tammy Lynn. And I have a question. He said rhetorically, do I still need a synagogue? Do you still need a synagogue? In these days where I can't even leave my house, what's the benefit of belonging to a synagogue, or what does a synagogue do for me? And it's a relevant question. So much of Jewish life in America, not just in America. I mean, synagogues have been around for over 2,000 years, some say. Some people say it started well after the end of the First Temple. There's evidence to suggest that people were gathering in gathering places that looked an awful lot like synagogues well before then. And so synagogues have been around for some time, and synagogues have served a number of purposes. Three of the things that come to mind is that a synagogue is a beit tefillah, a house of prayer where people go to get together and pray. A beit knesset, that is a house of gathering, like a community center where people just get together to be with each other. And also a beit midrash, a place to go and study and interpret and learn. So that's learning, gathering, praying, all sorts of things that involve this beit, that involve this home, this place of convening. But we can't do any of that anymore. Or rather, let me say that differently. We shouldn't do any of that anymore. And I'm going to stake a claim here that it's not safe for people to get together. People might argue against that. That's what the internet's for, really. But it's not safe for us to get together and do the things that were so much a part of the fabric of a synagogue's identity. And even for some people, a part of the fabric of their Jewish identity was belonging to a synagogue, getting together in a place with other Jews, with other Jewish families, with other Jew-curious people. Not everybody who goes to a synagogue is Jewish. And so, like, now what? Like, is this institution totally irrelevant? So you might not be surprised that my answer is no. This institution is absolutely still relevant. How synagogues serve with relevance in the world might be different than it was let's say, 4 centuries ago or 4 years ago or even 4 months ago. But in my opinion, humbly, synagogues are at least as relevant as they've ever been to serve the same functions. We just do it in a different way. And so I'll say if you've ever needed a synagogue, all the more so, I think it's an important thing to have in your life right now, as long as we're open to the idea of what it means to be at a synagogue. So I want to get to more of that in a second. Then we just want to see who's joined us. Steve Alexon says, Shalom Lekulam. That means peace, everybody. Natalie Serrata says, yes, we need a synagogue, but not a physical building. Dakota Black says, hello, all. Hello, Dakota. It's nice to see you. So I'm going to go back to what Natalie said. It says, yes, not necessarily a physical building. The synagogue as I want to reframe it a little bit as maybe a synagogue as a nexus, right? A kind of crossroads within a network of people, whether you are praying with those people or learning with those people or just schmoozing with those people. And the synagogue still serves that function. In fact, I would argue that it's now more important than ever for a synagogue to be that nexus in people's lives. And synagogues still need resources to do that. They still need people to work there. They still need our attention as long as we're open to doing things in a different way. I've learned a couple of powerful lessons, I'm going to say, over the last day, not just day, last few days, few weeks, but also over the last couple of years. When I decided to let my tenure as a rabbi in a physical synagogue expire and try to do something else, I got a little bit of but first I had my own fears about that, but I also had a lot of other people pushing me to say, like, how can you create community with people who can't be in the same room together? How can you really learn with people who aren't sitting across the table? Is that community even a real community? The assumption was that it was not. And then what I experienced when I opened up the Jew Curious School was that people who were learning together virtually also built a virtual community together that felt just as real to me as any physical community that I have been a part of. What I didn't know was that I did miss having an in-person community. And I found a wonderful community in Pasadena. All the more so, I really wanted to be part of that again. I had no idea that it was going to be transitioning into a place of being a virtual community in a way. But I wanted to carry through that lesson that I learned, that virtual community, that is digitally enabled, not physically enabled community, is real community. And I don't think people need community less now than they did before. I also learned, and that was learning. That was the Beit Midrash piece of it. I wasn't sure how that would work with the other aspects of Beit Knesset and Beit Tfilah. What I have seen is what we're doing at Pasadena with all the different, with our Zoom town halls and Sisterhood and Men's Club and our Social Justice Committee. All these groups are still getting together at least as much as they did before. They're just doing it over a different medium, namely Zoom for the most part, or any other application works as well. They're still getting together, and I actually heard somebody in a Zoom meeting say, I'm now more involved in the synagogue than I was before. I'm now going to more stuff and making more connections with ideas and with people than I did before, because it used to be a half-hour commute, right? I used to have to, put pants on and get in the car and go someplace and like time my dinner and come back and be tired. And that would make me decide maybe I don't do this other thing the next time, because I kind of put all my energy into that. Now I can actually get more involved in my synagogue than I was before, which means the synagogue is even more valuable in that person's life. So we figured out that the Beit Midrash not only still works, but is now more open and accessible to people than it's ever been. That's one aspect of the synagogue. We figured out that the Beit HaKnesset, that house of gathering, still works, and for some people works even better. But what about the tefillah piece? And this has been a harder but more recent lesson. Like I've said here before, I spent the first 6 years of my rabbinate encouraging as many people as possible to sit as close together as possible and sing as a way of lifting up prayer. And now all those are off the board. But I am also hearing from people who've said, I've never been able to connect with services the way I connect with services now. Right? Not just, connecting with an Ethernet cable, but I mean actually being present on a more regular basis than they felt able to before, and actually plugged in on a spiritual level. So that's what's working. So we've got the Beit Midrash, the learning piece. We've got the Beit Knesset, the community piece. And for some people, this, and I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but I, know anecdotally that there are people who can connect to prayer before, who can connect with prayer now. And that I'll take. Like that's good for, good enough for me. Here's the most recent lesson. Tonight I'm going to be present at my third Zoom memorial service. And this was a surprise for me. A few weeks ago, a good buddy of mine, his mother passed away, and she lived out of state, so his family went out of state, and he had friends from all over, and his mother had friends in nursing homes, and these are people who cannot travel right now. My parents are in a place like this. Everything's on lockdown. So they had a Zoom memorial service, and I will confess, I hope it doesn't get mad at me for this, I will confess that I had low expectations going into this thing. Like, I was showing up because he was my friend, and so it was worth giving it a try, and I was blown away by what a spiritual experience it was, what a holy moment was created over the internet, right? More people than could possibly, in pre-COVID times, more people were able to show up and speak. More people were able to show up and listen. And that really shocked me as to it could have all of the sanctity, it could have all of the honor as an in-person memorial service over a virtual thing. That was my first one. This happened like three weeks ago, a month ago, something like that. Tonight's my third. And I'm never going to say I'm looking forward to memorial service. I always, people say, hey, how was the funeral? And I was like, how do I answer that? It's never fun to be involved in a memorial service. It is always an honor because we're doing a mitzvah. We're seeing somebody off in an honorable way. And in that spirit, I'm really looking forward to this gathering this evening. So to answer the question, do I need a synagogue? There was a rabbi, Samson Raphael Hirsch, wrote in some of his notes in another writing, and it was hard to find the source of this, although I'd heard this story before. But there was a notion that Samson Raphael Hirsch, maybe half joking, about 100 years ago or so, said, if I had a superpower, if somebody granted me one wish to have a transformative impact on the Jewish community, it would be to nail shut the doors of all synagogues for 100 years. And somebody brought this up recently in light of the fact that many synagogues have closed their doors. But this was something he wished he could do, because he knew that just from the vicissitudes of American life, or modern life as it were, people place too much emphasis on going to a place to be Jewish and do Jewish versus doing it at home. And for him, Judaism needed to emanate back into people's living rooms, dining rooms, bedrooms, libraries, garages, if you will, any aspect of their life, rather than be delegated to a single place. And so that's why he was saying, we need to remove the synagogue from the centrality of Jewish life. That doesn't mean get rid of the synagogue. And now, in a moment when we are actually challenged by synagogues who have their doors closed, I think the synagogue has more and better work to do in front of it than it ever has. Because now what a synagogue can be is a resource, a nexus of relationships, information, talent, creativity to help emanate Judaism back into people's lives. And so my answer is yes. I think the synagogues are an invaluable piece of a Jewish life. If you don't belong to one, I don't judge, right? You do you. One of my main motivations for teaching online is to help people who don't maybe have a synagogue close to them or accessible to them, either physically or emotionally or spiritually or distantly. So that's why I'm very proud of that kind of work. But I think that synagogues like PJTC, like other synagogues that are doing great stuff online, are more important today than ever. So thank you for indulging me in that thought experiment. If anybody has any questions about, what does it mean to belong to a synagogue, or, what are some things that I can do at home, please go ahead and ask. So just to go back to the chat, Natalie Sirota says, I had a great time at the sisterhood meeting this week. They joked that I was a Rabbi John groupie. It makes me blush every time you say something like that. That's okay. But thank you. That's really nice. Kay Dixie says, hello from the Pacific Northwest. Nice to have you here, Kay. And people chatting back and forth. I only get invited to the men's club meetings. Lol, says Kay. That's just so you should know this about PJTC. Men's club. I'm not going to say it's a misnomer because it's an important organization. But for many years now, it's been open to not just men. And one of our good friends, members of longstanding Edie, will proudly say that she was the first non-man men's club member. So it's open to everybody. They do great work, as does our sisterhood. Kay Dixie says, being online has expanded my opportunities to participate. With all these different synagogues going to live streaming, shul shopping has never been easier. It used to be that if you live in a big city like LA, you might go to 2 or 3 synagogues to see which one was right for you. Now you can tune in on a Friday or a Saturday or whenever and look at 100 different places and see if you like their music or the cut of their jib, however it is you cut a jib. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. But Sherilyn Berger is here. Very nice to have you here, Sherilyn. Natalie says, I'm in virtual shul heaven. It is... while there are things that I desperately miss, I do miss singing with people. It is hard to sing on Zoom, I found. I think there may be some other platforms that are better for that. But I do miss being in a room and just singing while listening to others, and that's how people get into better harmony and things like that. Just the vibration of the air in the room with other people singing is something I am in profound mourning for. And I still have the great honor of singing with my partner, Cantor Ruth Berman Harris, and our davening team to help teach songs and help lead songs for all the people who tune in and watch our services. So that I'm glad I don't have to give up. So very nice to have everybody here today. Kind of a short lesson. I got to run to the synagogue for a thing. We're actually have to do some pictures for our website. So synagogues are great for places for taking pictures still. And it's not hard to book a room, I'll tell you that. So listen, I really appreciate everybody tuning in here. It's only through a synagogue that this connection is possible between us. So I really appreciate having that part in my life. Tammy Lynn Garrison says, potential convert, I've had a chance to learn a lot very quickly about Judaism thanks to all the online opportunities. Let's see. And Natalie says, if you still have enough people in your home/bubble, you can still harmonize. That's right. If you only need one other person. And sometimes it's a dog who's being very quiet right now. So ever since I brought her home, she was howling in the back of my car. So I put on some Hank Williams. It's got a little bit of howling in it as well. Jake had a cake. As a Jew by blood on my mother's side, to be perfectly honest, I know nothing about Judaism. Do you think a synagogue would welcome me in England? Only one way to find out. Jake had a cake. So I think, my understanding is that if you want to be involved in a synagogue in England, you need to call ahead. I mean, they've had different security protocols for a while now that we have not fully adopted yet. But I think it's still possible. I think if you show up and show up again, or if you call and talk to the rabbi, talk to other people there, let them know that you're sincere. You know, some synagogues have had trouble in the past with people who kind of show up and then leave, or show up and are insincere about being there, and so they're wary of that. This is in different communities, small places, big places. It really varies, and so my encouragement to people is to join in. Join in with respect, and be a good listener at first, and then when people show up, when people see you show up, they trust you, and that's a good way to show that you're sincere about it. And then I think that's the path to joining any family. That's the path to being in any relationship. If you're a respectful listener and you keep coming back and keep showing that you're there for somebody, then they will accept you. And that's my 2 cents. So your mileage may vary. So let me know if that doesn't work out, or let me know if it does. I'd be even more delighted then. So yeah, I'd like to be a part of something. See, I think that's a great source of meaning in our lives. And there's an author that I quote all the time, Susan Wolf, is a philosopher who wrote a great book called The Search for Meaning and Why It Matters, and talking about the content of what a meaningful is. She's not trying to write about what is the meaning of life. She's saying what is the content of a meaningful experience. And she says something has to be enjoyable, but it also has to be connected to something greater than yourself. And when you have those two things together, that's what you look back on and see as a meaningful experience. So it's got to be about something bigger than you. And that's where people really feel connected, meaningful, feel greater fulfillment in their lives, greater fulfillment, greater thriving, as Martin Seligman would say. And so I highly encourage that kind of behavior, as long as it's constructive. You could feel connected to something bigger than yourself. That's like, people just going around lighting trash cans on fire. But I don't recommend it. So good to see everybody here. Good Shabbos, says Dakota Black. And let's see. I think I'm going to sign off. Like I said, I gotta run to Pasadena to be actually physically at a place, which is a synagogue. I hope everybody's enjoying all the stuff that PJTC is doing these days. We're working on our high holidays. Those are coming up sooner than might be comfortable. And we've been taking a poll this week. If you're on our email list, you've gotten a link to a poll that's asking people, what's your comfort level with being in a physical synagogue? Do you plan to come to high holidays physically? And as we're planning on what our high holidays are going to look like, that kind of information is invaluable for us. Whether you're comfortable being in a physical place for a Shabbat service or a holiday service, let us know where your heart is, because that shapes our planning for the near and not so near future. So thank you all for learning with me today. I really appreciate this. And just to recap, yes, I think everybody needs a synagogue. I certainly appreciate mine. So with that, Pasadenans and heroes everywhere, peace.